my name is Dorian and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video is the first review that I will be doing on my channel, and it is for the Shadow and Bone Netflix television series. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a non-spoiler review first, and then I'm going to be going into characters, world building, the few big problems that I had with the show, and then finally the plot. So without further ado, let's get into the video. For my non-spoiler review, this was a high fantasy television series that if you're anything like me, you would love because it has great world building, lovable characters, love to hate characters, an intricate plot, and romance. This is one of the best, if not the best, book-to-screen adaptations that I have ever seen. And although some of the aspects from the book didn't transfer as well on screen, and the creators tried to alter a couple of things here and there to try and appeal to those of you who haven't read the books yet, and those few things didn't end up going as well, as a Grishaverse superfan, I am very satisfied. So if you haven't seen the show yet, I am going to be going into the spoiler review next. So leave now, go and watch the show. It was very well done. I was very pleased with it. And then once you're finished with that, you can come back and we can talk about the whole thing. I'm warning you though, if you stay on, you're gonna be spoiled, and you don't want that. So, goodbye. Shall we start with picking apart the characters? First, of course, we have Alina, who is played by Jessie May Lee, and I think she did a really good job of showing us how Alina was feeling from the beginning of the season to the end, how she was with Mal versus how she was with the Darkling, and how she felt being in the First Army versus being a Grisha and being thrown into the world of the Little Palace. I love that they made Alina's character half Shu, or in our case in this world, they would be half Asian, and I think that this aspect kind of brought a fresh approach to things, and it definitely gave me something else to think about while watching the show, because as someone who has never been in that position before, it was very interesting to see, even in a fantasy world, how these things can affect people. Next, we will go ahead and talk about Mal. I really enjoyed Mal in the show. I know some people really didn't like him in the books. I've always liked him in the books, but that's just my opinion, and I think I've been seeing a lot of people who did not like Mal in the books really liking him in the television series, and I think that's partly because of the actor who played him, but I also think it might have been the writers, because I think they kind of stepped it up with Mal a little bit. He is a complete badass in the TV show, and in the books I think he was kind of more melodramatic than he was in the series, but I really enjoyed him, and I loved how much he cared about Alina in the show and how far he was willing to go to protect her, and how he was even willing to fight the Darkling to show her that he really cares about her. That being said, he still allowed her to be her own person, and he didn't try to hold her back at all or to make her feel like an outsider because she became a Grisha when he is still just human and just a tracker. Next, we have Ben Barnes' character, the Darkling, and as predicted, Ben Barnes did an amazing job playing the Darkling because I actually felt for him while watching the show versus when in the books I absolutely despised him after the betrayal in the first one, and I think that Ben Barnes will continue to kind of tug on my heart a little bit and try and make me see where he's coming from, but ultimately in the end, I'm always going to be on Alina's side, and I'm always going to be against the Darkling. I still despised him after the betrayal in the show, but after seeing his backstory a little bit in the show, it made me hate him a little less than I did in the books. Moving on to Kaz, his character was not as sarcastic as he was in the books and not as witty, which I was kind of upset about, but ultimately he is a mastermind and he knows how to play the game of gambling and deception, and he is the bastard of the barrel 100%, and I still enjoyed his performance and I still enjoyed his character despite lacking the charisma that Kaz has in the books. Inej is an absolute queen in this television series, and I love her just as much as I did in the books. The actress who played her exactly how I imagined her. She did an amazing job. Honestly, hands down, this is one of the best casts that I have seen in a very long time, and that goes for just in general television series, and I'm very satisfied with it. I think that the creators really paid attention while they were casting this show, and I really really hope, but I also have a firm belief that they consulted Lee about some of their casting decisions. I know that she had a say in who was going to play Alina, and obviously that worked out really well, so I'm very happy with the casting, just in general. One thing that I really enjoyed that they kind of snuck in there with Inej was how strong her faith was, because in the books, her faith is mentioned just a little bit here and there, but in the TV series, it's a very big part of her life, and it has a very heavy influence over her and how she approaches Alina when they're hired to kidnap her. So I enjoyed that fresh little extra aspect as well. Jesper is my favorite. Kit Young did an amazing job playing him. Oh my gosh, every single time there was a scene with Jesper, I knew I was gonna be happy. Kit Young is 100% our sharpshooter. When it comes to Nina, I believe that the actress who played her did a really good job of coming across as ill-mannered and crude when she first meets Matthias, and then they did a really good job of implementing that into her personality and showing the viewers that that's just how Nina is naturally, and that's just who she is. And I love how they threw in there that she loves waffles, and I love how she kind of turned Matthias to waffles and kind of being a little crude himself. I love the Nina Matthias aspect in this television series, and I think it transferred very well on screen. I also love how she just kind of tells things as they are and she doesn't hold back. Matthias was very innocent and adorable in a kind of naive way, and then once he meets Nina, he realizes there's so much more he needs to learn about the world, and there's so much more he needs to learn about Grisha. Him kind of accepting Nina as a actual person instead of a witch seemed a little rushed to me, but I think that was just because they were trying to crank out their prequel storyline to hit the end of the season so that everybody could come together as they did in the end. But I still think it was done decently, so I'll give them that. And I think that the guy who played Matthias did a really good job of coming off as this like giant teddy bear, sort of, also badass jock. Jenya is another one that I loved, and I thought the actress did a really good job. I liked the friendship that her and Alina seemed to build at the beginning, and then the actress did a really good job of making the audience sympathize with her when she ended up staying on the Darkling side versus helping Alina when the betrayal happens. So I'm interested to see how they take the approach, if there is another season, to Jenya eventually turning to Alina's side after she betrays the Darkling. For Zoya, I liked how she came across at first being kind of snooty and jealous, but I will say I didn't like the turn that her character took at the end, and we'll get to that a little bit later, but I like how they threw in there the thing about her aunt when the Darkling expands the fold, because that is a very important piece of Zoya's storyline in later books and hopefully later seasons or series. I enjoyed the actress's approach to her. Can we talk about Milo for a second? Because Milo carried this whole thing on his back. He was so cute and he came into play so much. I was glad it wasn't just a one and done deal when we have him with the crows when they're crossing the fold. I love how he came into play later with Mal. I hope that we see more of Milo, honestly. Milo should get his own season. The biggest problem I had with casting was for Tante Helene. I thought that the actress was too young to play her. So when I pictured Tante Helene, I pictured her as this like super tall, super lean, bleach blonde, sharp features, and just like looking down her nose 24/7. And in the series, she's just this woman who's running a brothel. Although I will say, I cannot wait for Inej to get her comeuppance on Tante Helene. Also, where was her diamond necklace? Her big, like, giant diamond necklace. I was really looking forward to seeing that, and I don't think we did, or if we did, it was very small. I love Bagra, and I love the dudes who played Mal's two friends. Alright, so that wraps up for characters, and now we're moving on to world building. So, personally, I found the world building was easy to follow. However, I will say that I recommend watching it with the subtitles on, because that really helps you pick up on names of things and references to things in the show. The camp where we first end up outside of the fold and Ketterdam were just how I imagined them in the books. I think that the production designer and the set design team did a really good job, especially with all of the little props here and there, the currency, the cards, everything. So I'm not gonna lie, I can definitely see how someone who has never read the books before would feel a little overwhelmed by all the world building. I think you have to be a certain type of person who enjoys high fantasy TV series to really be able to immerse yourself into the world, because I can see how for other people it would just get on their nerves how much they were trying to pile on with the show. Like I said, I enjoyed it. it, and I think others enjoyed it as well. I loved how they incorporated the masks in Ketterdam, and I wish they went into it a little bit more about the significance of them, because we really just see background characters here and there and extras wearing them, so it would have been nice for them to go in a little bit about how each mask is designed a specific way and it represents a specific thing for specific people of that world. But I liked how they threw it in there just as a little extra something. I liked how they introduced the Druskella. I will say that there is a lot more to unpack there, and hopefully we will get that in the next season, but I think they did a good job of introducing them as witch hunters and introducing the country of Fjorda. I really enjoyed how they depicted the Grisha's power, and I found it interesting how we learned that you must touch your hands together before you can use your power. However, I will say that Alina, in the end, on the fold, there's one scene in particular where she uses her powers and she doesn't touch hands, so I'm wondering if that was an accident or if that is somehow super important, or if she doesn't even need to touch her hands anymore because she's becoming so powerful from the amplifier. I'm interested to see if I rewatch the show if I can find any others who didn't end up touching their hands together when they used their Grisha magic, but if there are later seasons, I will definitely be keeping an eye out for that. Alright, now we're moving on to the things that I hated. Okay, I didn't really hate them, I just wasn't a big fan of. So, number 1, Alina getting her scar removed. No, no, no. No. Alina would never get her scar removed, even if she thought that Mal had abandoned her, because she would be hoping that he would still come back even if years passed, okay? I don't believe at all that Alina would ever get her scar removed. And I know that Jessie Miley filmed a little video for Netflix or something talking about the scene where she gets it removed and talking about the significance of that and how she's kind of taking her life into her own hands and saying, I'm not waiting around. But the whole thing in the books is, yes, Alina is going to wait because Mal is her best friend and she has feelings for him. Number 2, Zoya and the Darkling having a sexual relationship. Absolutely not. No, they didn't, and that is one of the major things because Zoya is just kind of blindly following him in the books and she just wants his approval. She just wants to be acknowledged by him in some way, and I don't even think for her that she would want to be with him sexually unless they had already established another kind of relationship on a different level. So I didn't really like that. Wasn't a fan. I thought it was kind of stupid, but I will say I think for people who haven't read the books, them throwing that in there kind of helped explain why she didn't really like Alina that much. So I'll give them that, but I still didn't like it. Number 3 has to be, and this is really just, these numbers are just me seeing these things play out. This isn't really like number 1, number 2, number 3. But number 3 is the thing that I hated about this show the most, and it was the depiction of the amplifiers. So in the books, and just in general, the whole image of Alina is her wearing the stag collar, and eventually she gains a couple more along the way. I won't say anything else, but I just feel like they ruined that image, and they just ruined the significance of wearing an amplifier, and even other Grisha having these amplifiers and displaying them. Because in the end, it just kind of sinks into her skin, and it becomes a part of her, I suppose, but I just didn't like it. And I also hated how they had David put the amplifier on her. It was like, first of all, it was facing the wrong way. The antlers were supposed to be like wrapped around her neck like that, and second of all, ew, they half sunk into her skin and were like protruding from her. What? Okay, I don't even want to think about it. And the other thing was the Darkling having the other piece of the bone like in the top of his hand. Why? He killed the stag. That's the whole thing. You kill the animal, you get its power, you wear its bones as a symbol or to tell other people, hey, I'm super badass Grisha because I have an amplifier. You don't need 2 parts of the bones to control it, my friend. I just did not like that at all. Because I was really looking forward to seeing Alina with the stag's antlers, and they ruined it. Number 4, and everybody's probably going to say that I'm being too picky, but when the crows say on the ship in the fold at the end, no mourners, no funerals, okay, those are the words, and they were so anticlimactic. I think I even missed them the first time, and I was very disappointed in that because those were the words that I had been looking forward to hearing the entire time. Anyways. My last problem, and this is probably the second biggest one, was the ending where Zoya turns to Alina's side. So in the books, the whole thing is that, like I said before, Zoya is following the Darkling kind of blindly. She's blinded by ambition, she's blinded by power, and then she realizes that Alina is fighting for the right side, so she turns, and it's not till very later on, I think it might even be the very last book, that she turns to Alina's side and she helps. So them having Zoya just suddenly turn to Alina's side after we've already established that Zoya despises Alina just didn't make sense to me, and I don't even think it made very much sense to people who haven't read the books yet. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but I just didn't like it, and I don't think others really liked it because it just didn't sit very well, and it wasn't done very well. It was just all of a sudden Zoya is out there and she's controlling the ship, and then she's following the Darkling's orders, and then she's on Alina's side. And they did kind of give us a reason with her aunt, but that wasn't as big of a deal in the books, at least in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, because she still ends up following the Darkling. Okay, time to talk about the plot, and this is the last thing that we will be doing for the day. For the plot, I'm just going to be going through bullet points that I had throughout each episode, so it isn't really in any order aside from when I was watching it and when I decided to write these notes, so it might be a little jumbled. First and foremost, I want to talk about the absolutely pointless plotline of Nina and Matthias. So, as much as I enjoyed seeing them on screen and as much as I love their characters, I know that probably a lot of viewers did not like their plotline because it had absolutely nothing to do with everything else that was going on. We're introduced to Nina in a split second when the crows are supposed to be going to meet a contact to help them get across the fold to Alina, and then she gets captured by the Juskela, and then she's on the ship, and then it crashes, and then her and Matthias are stuck together, and then all that stuff happens, and then they become acquainted, and then they start liking each other, and then they go and get waffles, and then the Grisha show up, and they tell Nina that they're gonna take him and try him back in Ravka, and then she tries and saves him by telling people that he's a slaver, and then he thinks she betrayed him, even though she didn't, and he won't be able to get out of jail and purge for a long time, so she has to go with him. So then she ends up on the boat at the very end, and she's reunited with the crows. Caught up to speed? Good. That was very pointless, in my opinion. So I understand, to appease book lovers and to stay true to the books, they wanted to include all of the Six of Crows characters except for Wylan, and all the Shadow and Bone characters except for Nikolai, but honestly, I can see how it was overwhelming, and I can see how it was pretty pointless. I also thought it was interesting how they decided to have Mal taken from his original unit and put on the ship going to the fold, and then Alina burning those blueprints so that she'd go with him and draw a new map of the West Coast so that they could stay together. So I like that aspect because in the books, it's just kind of like Mal and Alina are going across the fold. They're just being sent across the fold as soldiers of the First Army. I loved how Kaz and Inej had little stolen glances here and there. I know a lot of people are complaining that they never kissed or anything. I'm glad that they didn't, because I think that it wouldn't have been right to have them kiss in this season, because although they had those little glances and it was alluded that they will eventually have a relationship, I don't think they were ready to kiss yet. So I was looking forward to having stolen glances, and I'm glad they didn't kiss. So I cried in the first episode, and I cried when they went to the fold in the Volcra attack and Mal got injured and then Alina was getting picked up by one. I was crying. I was bawling. But you know what? Extra points to them for making me cry in the first episode. Also, the words "meet me in the meadow" contributed to that waterfall, so I blame the writers. I called the captive in Ketterdam being Alexei, and I called them killing him and not actually letting him go after he told them about Alina. I didn't like how the Darkling had that Talon ring and he used it to cut open Alina's arm and then light just kind of spewed out of it. I think it would have transferred better if he just walked up to her and was like, "Let's see if you can summon light," and then her being like, "I can't do it." And I think it would have just made more sense to have him grab her and then just light kind of erupt out from her as it did in the books, because then we would have been able to introduce earlier on that the Darkling is a living amplifier, and then later on we could have gone into that a little bit deeper. So that didn't really transfer well to me, and I didn't like how they changed that. I really enjoyed the little Easter egg that they slipped in there about Kaz and Pekka Rollins' past. I think that will definitely be addressed if there's a season 2. I'm not really sure how they would do a season 2 without having the Six of Crows and the Shadow and Bone characters cross over again. I think this would be a good time to branch off from that and leave Shadow and Bone as Shadow and Bone and then have a separate series for Six of Crows. That's just my opinion, but I don't know if they can afford to do that or how they're planning on doing that. When I did my trailer reaction, I didn't know what the metal tank was, but after being introduced to the conductor, it clicked with me that that was his way of crossing the fold, so I thought that was a unique aspect. And I think it's interesting how they threw that in there, because in the books, it's not really addressed that other people tried crossing the fold aside from using Grisha and aside from using skiffs. So I think that was very interesting, and I think that was a nice little touch. I didn't understand why Inej's character was so unwilling to kill, because in the books, she is such a badass and she's not afraid to do what needs to be done. And not to mention when Tante Helene tells her that the person she's being sent to kill is a slaver and a sex trafficker, in the books, Inej would have been all over that and she would have slit that guy's throat or something, because she hates slavers, and that's the whole thing in the books. So I didn't get her unwillingness to kill, and I knew right from the beginning that she was gonna end up killing in that season anyways. But I will say that I'm glad that her reason for killing was to save Kaz, because again, that sneaks in there that they care about each other and they will eventually have a relationship. I also don't think Inej has a brother, so I'm not really sure why they said that she did or what the significance of that is, but I will be interested to see if they address that again or how that plays out. If she's reunited with her family, that would be interesting. As far as I know, that doesn't happen in the books, so that would be an interesting approach to things. I'm not really sure if it would transfer well either, but we will have to wait and find out. The scene with Tante Helene and Kaz really established their relationship and how they feel about one another, as well as how far Kaz is willing to go to protect Inej, and it shows how much he cares about her, so I really enjoyed that. I think it would have been kind of cool if Kaz had like stolen something or kind of left and then Tante Helene realized that like a bracelet was missing or something. I think that would have been cool, because that would definitely be something that would happen in the books. Again, I will say that I think it's important and interesting how they addressed the racial aspect of things and how Alina was half Shu in the series. As someone who's never gone through anything like that, it really shocked me, although I suppose it shouldn't have shocked me because we see it going on so much this day and age around us. And it was interesting to see how even in a fantasy world there can be these issues of people being racist and people alienating others because of their race. I did like how they addressed Jesper's gambling issue. However, it was too predictable that he was going to go off and gamble the money that Kaz gave him for coal away. So I think they did a poor job of introducing that, and they kind of did it too fast and just as a little, we have to check this off the box and we have to show people that this is an issue with Jesper. Favorite part, favorite scene, Lee Bardugo's cameo. She's a queen and she looked amazing in her purple kefta, and when she hugged Alina, it made my heart so happy, and it was just amazing to see her there in her own world being recognized. Amazing. I thought it was interesting how they incorporated West Ravka trying to break away from the rest of Ravka, and I liked that added aspect as well and how it was pushed more in the series than it was in the books. I really enjoyed all the political things that they threw in there, because I think as the books go on, Lee kind of delves into things more, but in her first trilogy it's just kind of mentioned here and there, so I liked how it was addressed more in the TV series. I also figured the conductor was going to betray the crows in some way or another, but I didn't exactly know how he was going to do it, so I was very surprised when he ended up slitting Alina's throat, and then that ended up not being Alina, and then he ended up getting his comeuppance in the end by the Darkling. But still, that whole thing was insane, and I felt really bad for Marie, because I can't remember how she died in the books, but that was rough. I like how they had Zoya respond to Alina punching her in the face during training with magic, because that's what happens in the books, and that really shows us how much she doesn't like Alina and how much she wants to show that she's better than her. I also thought having Bagra living in a stone cave instead of a little hut was lame. I just didn't like that interpretation of where she lived. I thought it was just stupid. But then I suppose that it shows how much she's been pushed out by the Darkling, maybe? She lives in a cave. I don't really know. I just didn't like it. If you didn't think for any reason that Mal and Alina's letters to each other were getting intercepted, I don't know what you were thinking, but I thought it was really obvious, and that's not just because I read the books. I think I would have been able to call that without even reading them. Could they have made it more obvious that Genya and David had a thing for one another, or at least Genya having a thing for David? I cringed so hard at the scene where David came in to give Alina those gloves. It was so bad. It was so cringy. The betrayal was just amazing, and Bagra helping Alina was also amazing. I love how she helped her, but she still kept her attitude and air about her and was just like, listen, you ignorant little girl, this is what's happening. happening. I know, because I'm his mom, and you have to leave. I love that. I'm sad that something bad is gonna happen to her in the next season, though, probably. One of the funniest scenes was when the crows stole the Darkling's coach and knocked David out. And then there was the cameo of the Shadow and Bone book that Jesper holds up. That was awesome. I think I like screamed when I saw that scene. I was like, there's the book, there's the book. Amazing. I couldn't wait for Alina to take back her power at the end. I was just waiting and waiting, and she did not disappoint by being like, the power's mine because I spared the stag, so bam. And then she oh yeah, I forgot I didn't like that part. I just realized I didn't like that part, even though I was waiting for her to take back her power, because she's laying there. She has a vision of the stag. All of a sudden she realizes because she saved him, she is in control. So she grabs Inesh's knife that was laying there for who knows how long, stabs it through the Darkling's hand so that Bone is dislodged, and she has her power back. As I said before, I didn't like the thing with the amplifiers and how they tried to change it, and I didn't like in this instance how even though Alina spared the stag and realizes her power is her own because of that, she still has to dislodge the bone shard in the Darkling's hand so she can take that power back. Oh well, I was still glad that she took her power back and was being badass with it, but I still don't like that aspect. And lastly, seeing all of my favorite characters coming together in the end on the skiff and then after to travel together. I loved seeing that, and it made my heart so happy because I've been waiting to see these characters on screen for a very long time, and I'm so glad that this adaptation was genuinely very well done, and I really enjoyed it. So overall, my consensus is this was a very good adaptation. I'm happy for Lee. I'm proud of Lee. I'm happy with the way it turned out, and I'm very happy that it is being shared with the world. I saw that the Shadow and Bone trilogy is back at #1 on the New York Times. At least it was last week, I believe. So that is so exciting to see, and I'm so happy about that. And honestly, I'm very excited for a season 2, and I can't wait to see where the story will go. So, per my rating scale, out of 5 stars, I gave Shadow and Bone 4. Alright everyone, that is all for today. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel to help it grow, and let me know down below whether you agree with some of the things that I didn't like, or if you disagree with some of the things that I like, what your take on the show was if you haven't read the books, what your take on the show was if you have read the books like me, and aside from that, I will see you next time.